Hi everybody, I'm Alyssa Talbert. This is Rabo LeBear. She's my cat. She's got a Facebook. She'd love to be your friend. And today we are talking about adaptations. So, adaptations are so cool to study because they kind of connect the dots between several different concepts. In biology, in this biology class, there are 4 big topics we hit. The first one was cells. Simple. The second one, something you may have had trouble with, may have been a new concept to you, was genetics. That's my personal favorite. The third one is evolution, and the fourth one is ecology. Well, adaptations pull information from genetics and from evolution. And we've already talked about genetics. We're about to talk about evolution, so right now we're just building a bridge. We're building a bridge between genetics and evolution by talking about adaptations. Before we really dive into adaptations, it's important that we refresh our brains with some information that we learned from genetics. So, just a refresher. I know that you all know this. You're all masters at genetics. But in case you forgot, or maybe you slept too late and you're having a bad day, genetics is the study of how DNA codes for specific traits, and those traits can get passed down through our DNA from our moms to us to our kids. And I just say moms because I'm a girl. Mom and dad to us, to our kids, and so on and so forth. We also talked about how there's typically two versions of a trait. You've got a dominant and a recessive version. A dominant version only needs one copy of an allele to be expressed. Again, just a refresher, alleles, they're just two things, like the two halves of a gene that come from your mom and dad. You get one allele from your mom and one allele from your dad. If either of those are dominant, just one, it doesn't have to be both, then you have the dominant phenotype. Phenotype is what gets expressed. And I know it feels like we're going fast, but all of this is review. So, if you have a dominant allele, just one, then it gets expressed, the dominant trait. Recessive alleles need 2 copies to be expressed. So for instance, I have very straight hair. That's a recessive trait. That means that my mom and my dad both gave me a recessive allele, and my hair is straight. You have to have 2 copies to have the recessive allele. Alright, fast forwarding to the very end of the unit, we're going to skip over Mendel. We're going to skip over Punnett squares. We're going to skip over, those weird things that happen like codominance and incomplete dominance, and we're going to go straight to mutations. We talked about mutations a lot. We talked about them in cells with protein synthesis. We talked about them in genetics with the big genetic disorders like Down syndrome. But mutations are important parts of adaptations or adaptations. Mutations are a change in your genotype. Your genotype is just this sequence of DNA. A change in your genotype that results in a change in phenotype. So, that's kind of weird, those are big words. Anytime your DNA changes, and that results in the way that you look changing, that's a mutation, or the way that you are. It doesn't necessarily have to be the way that you look. You may not be able to see a mutation. Also important, and I can't stress this enough, is that mutations are random. No one decides to mutate. It would be cool if you could, but no one does. It's totally random. And there's some studies out there in the science world that say that, some places in the genome are more prone to mutating than others because the DNA is weak in those places and it breaks. But for the most part, for the vast majority, mutations are totally random. We can't predict them. We can't do anything about them. It just changes. So what kinds of mutations are there out there? We talked about how sometimes a nucleotide, which is just one of the codes in DNA, so you have A, C, T, and G. A nucleotide is just one of those. We talked about how sometimes one can be removed totally from DNA, just like cut out. We also talked about how sometimes you can just add a new one in. You can just add a brand new nucleotide, and so instead of you having 4, now you have 5, and so that kind of like messes things up with the complement strand. But you can add or subtract a nucleotide. You can flip one for another, so maybe you had A and it gets flipped for G. It happens, and a lot of times that results in some bad things. All of the mutations we talked about have been bad up to this point. We talked about genetic disorders. We talked about, things where your proteins change so much that you can't live. And we talk about how a lot of mutations that change your protein sequence in transcription and translation actually are fatal. You can't live with them. So we have this connotation in our mind that mutations are so negative, but sometimes they aren't. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about adaptations. This is important. Remember this. If you don't focus on anything else, focus on this. Adaptations are a change in your genome that end up being helpful. So adaptations are anytime your DNA changes and changes your phenotype, and that change ends up helping you. So let's put that in like scientific terms. So an adaptation is any change to the genotype that creates a beneficial phenotype. So a change in your DNA that benefits you, that helps you survive. So let's think of an example of something that would help, a change, an adaptation that would help an animal survive. So think about a polar bear. Just picture it in your mind, you're in Antarctica. Just kidding. You're in the Arctic. Polar bears don't live in Antarctica, they live in the Arctic. And you're all bundled up in your little fur coat, you're looking good, and you see a polar bear. We're just setting the scene. You see a polar bear, it's so majestic. What does it look like? Polar bears are white, right? They're white. Why is that so cool? Polar bears blend in with their environment. So, a polar bear lives in the snow, and a polar bear has this beautiful thick white fur that kind of keeps it camouflaged. So, why is the polar bear white? I swear, if any of you just thought to yourself, because it wants to blend in with its environment. We just talked about this. No, it doesn't want to blend in. It just happened to blend in with its environment. So here, let me set this up for you, which has no scientific merit at all. This is just like an example that, maybe what happened, but I really don't know. So you've got these brown bears in a cave. Now you're not an Eskimo anymore, you're a brown bear. So you're a brown bear in a cave, and you're about to, witness the birth of 3 beautiful cubs. So these 3 cubs come out, and one of them is white. And you're just like, oh, how did that happen? Like, you don't know how that happened? But this bear comes out white. And his brothers are brown, but there's a white one there. And it just so happens that for some reason, the white one lives longer. This white one lives through several mating seasons and has several offsprings, and all of his offspring carry the trait for being white. Over time, his offspring create more offspring that create more offspring, and eventually you've got a white bear, which is insane. That's so cool. What that's an example of is camouflage. Camouflage is a really, really cool adaptation. It helps a lot of animals. It helps a lot of prey to survive. An example that's even better than a polar bear. Have you ever seen a giraffe? With the long necks. The obvious adaptation on a giraffe is its long neck that it can use to eat the leaves up high. It has more food, it lives longer, it's healthier, so the long neck is what adapted. But it also is yellow with these brown spots. And I know what you're thinking, how is that camouflage? It's yellow with brown spots, it would stick out like a sore thumb. Well, yes, if we put it in the Appalachian Mountains, it would stick out. But where it lives, it's got a lot of warm tones around it. It works so good. I dare you. Go look up a camouflage giraffe. Do it. Just do it. Pause the video, look up a camouflage giraffe. It's insane. One that's even better than a giraffe, insects. There's insects that look like plants. You've got stick bugs that look like walking twigs. So camouflage is a really, really good way to survive, because it's really good for helping you avoid predators and things that want to kill you, which again ties in another concept that's pulling ecology into it. So, adaptations are beneficial mutations. And if you have one takeaway that everything that's alive today is alive because it has adapted to survive. So we are alive because we have outcompeted and outsurvived other organisms because we are adapted. I hope you got something from this video. Add Ribo on Facebook. Have a great day.